All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the end of the world with Michael and Stu.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Stu, and today we are talking about the news. And sure looks bad, to quote Joni Mitchell, right? I mean, this has been a pretty rough couple weeks, starting basically with the turn of the new month. February 28th, I believe, was the day that the bombardment of Iran by Israel and the United States commenced.
When he showed up in the middle of the night wearing a Team USA white baseball cap, announcing that he was starting a war.
You know, as one must, I guess.
Or as they say today, President Trump or Donald Trump finally became president. Right?
I haven't heard that one in a while. That was a real
all cap and all. Yeah, we haven't heard like any of the infrastructure week bits. Like I feel
that
like
was all first term material.
Yeah, I feel like the room is being read a little bit that we are in like apocalypse hour potentially here. You know?
Yeah, it's quite bad. So we have a new supreme leader in Iran. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Which is strange because I figured that the dominoes were going to fall within minutes and then Trump would just kind of handpick somebody. I was thinking maybe Rubio just as a transition.
Ayatollah Marco Rubio. Yeah, that would have been not great. It's
to get him a bit of experience before he takes over Cuba, which seems to be the next move.
It's in the offing. Yeah. It's Mojtaba Khamenei, which is the son of the previous leader. A friend pointed out that Mojtaba is very similar to the name of the virus from Outbreak, the Mojtaba virus.
Oh, yeah, very similar. I mean, this is like, I don't know if it's, I mean, obviously there are some strategic reasons to do this, which we'll talk a bit about during the podcast, but like, it's just pretty amazing to have Trump basically try to like roll out the playbook from Venezuela, like with this strength that they can do whatever they want. And then they'll get rid of this guy that everybody wants gone because he's killed whatever 32,000 people in one night or whatever they're saying has happened. And then just it's like a few days pass. Like, okay, we have found a new leader. We're going to go with his son. Like, oh, I see. Maybe they have some slightly different ideas about how this is going to pan out. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I kind of wonder. I don't know that much about the son. I've listened to some pods about him. I guess he's as hardline, if not more so, than his father. And
I believe his wife was killed in the attack.
She was. That's correct.
So if he was slightly more hardline before the father died, perhaps after the father was killed along with his wife, he might actually be toughening up those lines. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, fair
perhaps America's sign of strength will bring him feebly and humbly and almost appreciatively to the negotiating table, which is sort of what I had assumed would happen.
That was not probably what I thought most likely. I do think it's interesting when revolutionary groups that overthrow an absolute monarch resort to just making their son the next leader. Like, you know, just like this has happened a few times in history. The most obvious example is Oliver Cromwell in the UK, like in England, I guess at the time, who, ruled with an iron fist after having the king beheaded and, proclaiming himself Lord Protector, purging Parliament of any dissent. Like, you're a real kind of proto-dictator figure. And then as he was dying, he was like, I know who should take over next. My hapless idiot son, Richard Cromwell, who literally was overthrown within a year and then somehow lived for another like 45 years after being overthrown, just like as a country squire or whatever. Sure. Also, Napoleon being like, I'm the ultimate self-made emperor. I've who
will also be that? My son.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like the pro athletes when their kids become, the sort of like sometimes the talent is genetic.
How many sons like been in the gym since he was a kid type deal in the locker room with all the other.
Well, like there's the Steph Currys of it all, right? But then there are like Bronny James or what, you know, like that it's,
Or Michael Jordan. What was his name?
I don't remember what his kid's name was, but he didn't,
Is that right?
I don't even know if he did that. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
if
he played college.
I don't know if he got off the bench much. Anyway, yeah, there's not the best track record.
Jeffrey Jordan.
That's right. He's the one who's dating Scottie Pippen's ex-wife, right?
One of them. There's Jeffrey and Marcus.
Oh, I think Marcus is the one that's maybe dating Pippen's wife.
Okay, Jeffrey attended the University of Illinois. Marcus, they both played UCF, and I'm glad we got to the bottom of that.
Well, that's crucial for present day concerns. But back to the issue at hand with Iran. I thought over the weekend, we're recording this on Monday, the 9th of March. I thought the images of Tehran just engulfed in flames and clouds of oil was probably some of the most apocalyptic stuff I've ever seen. It reminded me of those videos from the wildfires when you were out in LA, of those people who would be like fleeing, driving through like a wildfire. Except this is obviously, you know, much worse in as much as it's entirely man-made, not the sort of indirect global warming man-made of wildfires, right? I mean,
I think like one of the things that's tough right now is that, you know, we've been dealing with this every time one of these situations has happened, as we become more and more like involved in whatever intersection between media, social media, and AI that we like now exist in, right?
Yes,
And whether it's like something like the Kirk shooting, you know, and then it's like, oh, did this guy have a mini pistol or whatever? Like, look at this camera angle and all this stuff. And this guy took the camera down, or, you know, right away, and trying to discern like what is real footage and what is not real footage. It's functionally impossible.
Whereas with like JFK, that it took 20 years for people to start talking about Badge Man and like these enlarged photos of people in the background at Dealey Plaza or whatever, right?
Right.
Now this all just happens right away.
Well, and there is something like, I don't know if you experience this sensation at all, because like, obviously the only ultimate concern is like the humanity of these people that is like treated like fully as without value. I mean, like fully, we are in a fully, completely, our White House is out there actually just saying no mercy, right? Bragging about the relentless.
They're the most evil people who've ever lived.
Yeah, and just that like there's like with Hegseth, like of all the objectionable things, one of the standouts is the glee he gets of explaining the devastating nature of like the impact of the bombs. Like he's like turns to the press like, you know, we got our beautiful B-2s up there. It's like, this is sick. This is extremely sick. And then you watch and it's like, it feels dehumanizing to like try to figure out which of what you're seeing is happening, what isn't happening. People who are putting like misleading videos to either effect online. There's just like this people predicting on Kalshi and Polymarket when the news is happening. This has unleashed the sickness that we've been talking about now for 2 years on the podcast. It's like, if we've been talking primarily about symptoms, this is like, it's like the dam has broken and we now just are in the age of the disease.
Yeah, the cancer has metastasized, you might say.
That's right.
It's spread to every part of culture.
And I think that's like really important, Stu, just like, because it's everything moves so fast and we just forget everything. It's like, this happened because, from best I can tell, and again, like who knows what is real, but like best I can tell, there was negotiations going on with Oman mediating, and there was progress that reports suggested he was going to get a far superior deal than even Obama got.
That's right.
And they gave interviews, and you saw the guy running around the world essentially trying to stop this thing, being like, this is what Iran's agreed to. The U.S. envoy suddenly goes silent. And then the next day this starts and we're talking about the usual regime change, evil people thing. And I don't think anybody has mentioned, because of just the cacophony of all of this, that like this started, like they're now saying like, and then they'll come back to the negotiating table, but like they were there. Like this is how profound the dehumanization has become.
Right. I mean, like, what would the point of Iran ever negotiating again with the United States be? Right.
Well, and this is where the scary thing, Stu, is that, like, what's the end game here? Is that if you take what you just said as the most likely scenario,
yeah,
right? You've been sent to the negotiating table. You've already had your at least parts of your nuclear program destroyed, right? Like this already did happen. You've already been lied to by this country over the last, like forever, but it's over the last couple of decades about what the nuclear deal would do and how rock solid it was. And then this Trump guy comes along and then it's back and forth and all of this deception. And then this. So if you would never go again to the negotiating table, then what options do the US and Israel believe that they have right now? And those are some truly frightening ones.
Right. And from what I've heard, and there's been a lot of back and forth about this, the attack had certainly been conceptualized for months to happen around this time. And I guess the way that people are alleging Netanyahu sold the attack now to Trump was by saying, oh, we've got this piece of intelligence. All their head guys are going to be in one place and we can blow them all up. So we've got to do it. And Israel seems to have implied they were going to act with or without the United States. But of course, that's a sort of game theory strategy, right? Like,
and also a very facile cover story if they want it.
Yeah, America. I mean, absolutely. And so the United States, Trump has claimed, we knew that if Israel did their attack, then Iran would retaliate against us. So we figured we may as well go in on the attack with Israel to preemptively do the most damage or whatever. But then people are like, oh, so like Israel is controlling, your actions. And Trump's like, no, in fact, I think I actually egged them into doing. It's like this very weird thing where he wants to have it all ways at once, right? Like,
right. And most likely it's just both parties in concert. But it is kind of...
Well, it's like a feedback loop, right? One pushes one, the other pushes back.
Sort of like tragically literary about this, that like we as a political entity that sort of spills out into the world through our power of all different forms have been sort of engrossed by the question of Israeli influence since October 7th on America.
Yes.
It obviously had a very real impact on Biden and then Harris's possibilities and prospects of re-election. Trump was able to use it in the same disingenuous way he uses so many things.
Entirely facile way, yeah.
I mean, the peace candidate briefly.
You want to prevent a war with Iran, vote for Donald Trump. I mean, this is J.D. Vance's main pitch.
Right. And this idea of like a sort of desperate populace who is clearly not supportive of this, telling Democratic lawmakers and candidates, you need to come out against this or you will lose. And they just are like somehow beholden to it. And it's like, this is crazy. Like, what calculation are they doing? They're costing themselves this election. And then Trump gets in and it's just a bait and switch, right? Like,
of course.
And now we're just at the point where and this is what's so scary, I think, across the board, is that the facade is down, right?
Mask
and like,
off, as this.
The comparison I really think makes sense here at just to show you, like, to show the scale that we're dealing with, but the same principle is the thing that made Trump's very initial run for the Republican primaries, right?
Yes.
Alluring to some, charming or endearing, was this kind of mask off where he went, oh, I write checks for both of these parties.
Right.
Oh,
well, the idea that he was a true outsider.
And just that, like, he would say the things like, yeah, the war in Iraq,
he keeps it real.
Troops did die in vain. We didn't get anything out of it. Like, we just spent trillions of dollars. We lost all of our, like, and there were elements of that were like, oh yeah, he's sort of obliterating the need for that facade that has sustained sort of neoliberal post-war American politics of liberation, especially when it comes to foreign policy. And now we're seeing sort of like the extreme dark inverse of this, where they don't have to feign that they're protecting individual people in Iran. They don't have to
democracy, right?
They don't have to go to the UN with like little packets of whatever.
Send up
like
Colin Powell with yeah.
He didn't have to do any of that. He just had to wake up in this incredibly like cowardly fashion in the middle of the night on Friday to avoid a market disruption.
And this was the day that you returned to the US too, right?
Yeah.
So you were like
Yeah.
awake because your clock was off from
Yes.
being in
Yeah.
the UK.
Yeah. And it was just
I
like,
remember I woke up to the text. We talked about this last week, but it was like, wake up, war is on or something.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, great.
But I just think that the one thing I just wanted to point out before we get into some of the US stuff and the foreign policy stuff is that like, I just feel like the danger here is that Trump and Netanyahu, but like particularly Trump, is that like there's just this one con, right? It's been this way for his whole life in business or in politics that like he is the best and he's certain and he's strong and he can do whatever he wants. And like when you get into something like this,
Yeah.
where you are clearly out of your depth as a strategic thinker, and he's been, to his credit, in rooms his whole life where he's out of his depth.
It's true.
But like this is
Stakes are a little bit higher than a casino in Atlantic City.
Unfortunately, this is where the Ponzi scheme ends.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that it ends at probably the most dangerous manner with one of the most dangerous enemies in one of the most volatile and dangerous areas in the world. And he can't pivot because he doesn't have any other con. There's no close there.
Right. And I mean, I think we can see this in the fact that he literally is unable to articulate what the war is even about.
Mm-hmm.
He's now claiming the war will only end. Well, this was a couple days ago. It's already shifted, as we'll discuss in a minute. But he wants unconditional surrender, which I think is probably just a term he's familiar with from World War II movies or maybe the Civil War, right? So, I mean, does he legitimately think he's like FDR or U.S. Grant? Like, probably he does, but, you know, like,
well, you know, if you think about back to like,
does he understand what unconditional surrender in both those cases involved? Like, literally, the Union Army, like, taking over the entire South, the drive to Berlin, you know, the literal deployment of nuclear weapons against Japan, right? I mean, these the stakes? Because that's what that term evokes for me, is like that level of stakes. And yet we're seeing none of the requisite, A, seriousness from the leadership, but B, none of the material preparedness. I mean, no one has been asked to sacrifice anything. No one has been asked, you know, like in World War II, it's like, we're going to requisition all these factories to make munitions. And right now it's like, oh, we're running out of interceptors. Whoops.
I mean, this to me, this is probably the most, I mean, again, I think we should say, just as we get a little further into this, like we are obviously talking probably for most of this about the political implications and sort of the geopolitical structure. That is not to like not suggest that the treatment of these people isn't at the forefront, right?
No, of course not. Like, obviously, we both oppose this entirely, yeah, right?
Obviously,
yeah.
But you know, this is an amazing thing to see, is to get an impression finally of what it looks like when America is not seemingly completely impenetrable, and how quick it was able to come, and how much money has been spent our entire lifetimes to the detriment of the social safety net, the healthcare system, the education, on and on, the usual complaint. But we are now days in to a war with Iran, or not even a war, an engagement. Is that what they're calling it? A military engagement?
Yeah, they go back and forth on that.
You're like, well, sorry, we're actually out of the defense part. It's like, wait a minute, I thought this is part of the...
What did our $1 trillion budget go to?
Well, this is like one of the many illusions that have been sold the American people for the entire post-war run.
For our entire lives.
Our entire lives, especially. This invincibility, even though we don't have any wins on our docket.
Or
right?
any wars against actual opponents.
Exactly. But like, it's this notion that if we were pushed, there would be all of these at least slightly conventional military ways that we could completely dominate people into submission, which has not been shown to be true in any of the engagements. If we just go with, let's say, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, right?
Well, and no, I mean, Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, conventionally, we can overwhelm people, but it's like, that's not the nature of war anymore. That hasn't been the nature of war since the Second World War.
This enemy.
No.
There's a reason why this particular country was not fought with by successive administrations.
Yeah.
It is not the same thing as it isn't like Venezuela, where you just go in and pick up Maduro. And like, what did you even actually do there? You just got an oil deal because
and you got rid of one guy and killed a couple guards. Like,
Iran is first of all, at least a serious, legitimate regional power.
Yes.
In an incredibly sensitive and important region of the world. Okay, that's it.
No doubt.
You look I showed you that clip before we got on here of the Iranian journalist just being like, yeah, they're just going to figure out that this is not Afghanistan or Iraq or Libya, or Syria. This is Iran. Like, they're going to regret what's going to happen because Iran's going to go off now. Yeah. And, I don't know if you followed the story, but there was one report that came out that said, do you remember that when the Iranian president got on the airwaves and apologized for bombing
to the Arab neighbors? Yeah.
So apparently this was a sort of attempt at de-escalation.
Right.
So the idea was that America would see this and there would be an off-ramp, right? To okay, we also won't do any attacks from bases in those countries, et cetera. And in response to that, Trump went on Truth Social and basically made fun of them for a humiliating defeat.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, man, you are not dealing with the people that you think you are dealing with. You've already killed their leader. You've already said out loud that you want to destroy all of them. Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen? And I think there's just as good an argument right now that save for extremely destabilizing weapons, Iran has some advantages right now, right?
Yeah. I think the contrast with Venezuela is so stark. Right? It's just like, what are you thinking? It's 3 times bigger. It's very inhospitable terrain. Should ground forces have to enter, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a regime that has been in power for 47 years, preparing for exactly this, right? That's right. And I mean, it's funny because Hegseth, they've started saying this line about we're bringing to end a 46-year-old conflict, right? Yeah, that's which is just like, what are you talking about?
Right. And if anything, the difference is that Iran has, in a way, been preparing for the possibility of this.
Absolutely.
America hasn't, because America has been doing things like, let's go fight a war in Afghanistan and Iraq. In the meantime, let's learn 0 lessons from that and then go for it again. I mean, so this is where it gets extremely frightening for me personally, is that what the language I see from the administration that is so different. I compare most of this stuff to Bush too.
To Bush, yeah.
Right? Because this is something that we lived through, and clearly you could see a sort of neoconservative puppetry to what Bush was being led to do, and his sort of American intuition combined with fairly anti-intellectual worldview and capabilities sort of helped convince him to do certain things that did not work out well for the country, that a certain group of maniacs thought would work out well. Right?
That's right.
But it always, Rumsfeld is a great example of sort of trying to euphemize something impossible to euphemize, right? Mm-hmm. This is to the point where it became kind of a joke. It was like him out there every day getting just hammered and by the press and saying things like unknown unknowns or whatever.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
What's happening here is so starkly different because it's not flowery. It's they're proud to explain to Americans how dangerous the world is, right? And that this is somehow something we can all rally behind. But to me, it feels like they are preparing to do something more dangerous and then suffer the consequences. And when I hear something like, oh, we went in because Bibi told us he was going to do it anyway, I don't have any real reason to believe that that also couldn't include that he's planning to send a nuke on to Iran.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that's
like all of this feels like there was no run up to war in the conventional sense. But all of a sudden we're getting these posts that we're in this like massive war. No mercy. Shot like pictures of Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Like it's
well that just utterly deranged montage
yes.
of clips they shared.
Yes. But like this is what I'm saying is that like when like Iran continue to do this, should they do so, that it then gets it's the classic feedback loop of
Yeah.
Trump and co being like, see, this is how dangerous Iran was. And then, who knows? Like if if what could you like rule out nuclear engagement in the way that you have sort of always been able to rule it out? Kind of like, yeah, it's not actually going to get there. There's no chance you could do that right
now. No, I wouldn't. I want to think about Israel a little bit before we move a little bit further into some of the consequences of this. I think last week we spoke about what are Israel's motivations possibly. The main one seeming to be to create a failed state where a vital opponent once was, right? To just literally turn Iran into the new Syria, the new Libya, whatever, what have you, right? And then there's this kind of messianic thing that's been coming up in some Israeli media that I've seen, where some of the more extreme hardliners, people who think Netanyahu is like left wing, have been speaking about greater Israel more and more, which is something that literally, if you brought it up in the 90s, people would be like, you're an anti-Semite.
Can you just explain it?
Well, basically the idea that biblically Israel is not just the small country that we know since, 1947 or whatever, that actually the land from the Nile River to the Euphrates is greater Israel. So like basically the whole Middle East on the Mediterranean coast up into Iraq.
I like the idea of going through the Old Testament and being like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Hold on.
It's all ours.
Yeah. I mean, basically, right? So this is an area that encompasses Turkey, parts of Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq. Oh, and of course, Lebanon, whom Israel has been like also relentlessly bombing again. Allegedly, they're searching for the body of a soldier who's been missing for 40 years, and they've killed like 400 people in this search for this one dead person, which, I don't know, it seems extreme. I don't know what to say.
Well, I would think in terms of Israel, I think that sort of one of the dynamics that's going on is that for a long time, not just since October 7th, but for a long time, it's this notion of if, everyone in the West needs to understand that we are surrounded by enemies, right? This has long been any action we take, any disproportionality is always justified by some hypothetical bigger problem that like surely we all want to avoid, right? And if it gets to that point, then we would have to do even more. So you have to let us do this in Lebanon, right? Or this wherever else, all along the border areas, but to take a little more of this land. And then eventually, we have to commit genocide on the Palestinians because, if there's a regional conflict, like if this gets out of hand, like this is kind of the logic for our whole run here, sort of, right? And so I think what's really frightening is that it now feels that Netanyahu, and God knows who's in his ear, right? Like you said, these types of people,
Ben Gvir and these other Smotrich.
Yeah, like, it's undeniable that what they have been doing has been creating the conditions for the very multi-pronged attack against Israel, obviously spearheaded by Iran, that they then would have to react in a more substantial way again.
That's right.
Again. And that's, to me, is like so frightening about this is like, if the big fear was that Iran actually starts emptying the clip into Israel, and that had to justify basically every sanction, every move, the obliterating of the nuclear program, then what is this decision?
Yeah.
And what are they hoping the actual end game is? And this is the scary thing. We talk about you can't say no for sure about nukes anymore. It's like, the people you're talking about, there are people in the Israeli government who are going to be advocating for the use of it. You know it.
Absolutely.
There's definitely people.
And, for me, growing up, I always, grew up around a lot of Jewish people, but a lot of people who weren't Jewish who had a kind of respect for Israel because of 67 and 74, right? Because of the times when Israel, as a fledgling 20-year-old state, took on the whole Arab world and won in 6 days, right? And that kind of nostalgia for that era, those like formative wars when Israel was the real underdog and Kim, that seems to be firing the imaginations of a lot of these people, right? Like we need to go back to the spirit of 67 or whatever, right? But it's like the situation on the ground is now quite different,
right?
With the presence of their U.S. weaponry, but also the nuclear. They have
right, but I mean,
possibly
I
hundreds of nuclear weapons, right?
Yeah, but you can sort of draw a line from the part that you can sort of draw a line from October 7th is like whatever your personal beliefs are on Israel's actions in this region since October 7th, you just can't deny that the sort of moral authority, nostalgic or otherwise, that existed for Israel, the goodwill that Israel had among even if it was mostly the political class of various Western nations and so on, all of these things, the security of their territory, all of these things have been substantially eroded,
yes,
by their actions. Okay, and by the overall volatility and turmoil that has existed in this area, and like those were the things that kept this contained. Weirdly, right? Like Israel's actions could still be brutal, brutish, like disproportionate, many occasions, as we know.
Yes.
Not just October 7th. Like we've been around long enough. It's not obviously that was a magnitude of order, but now we're at a point where it's kind of like what Trump is doing, where it's like you're creating the conditions to exacerbate the types of fears of your populace, right? That took over many Israelis after October 7th.
Yes.
And creating the conditions to be like, well, look, now we have to actually destroy Iran or we will be destroyed.
Right.
And that to me is what is like the scariest part of this is that like, I don't see any other reason to create these conditions than if you have decided like we are at a sort of end game with what we are able to do regionally.
Well, and also just apocalypticism, which we've been talking about for 2 years, just the idea that, okay, this is it. This is the end game, right?
Well, it's an interesting transition of sort of like apocalyptic thinking, the sort of ebbs and flows of it. Like obviously, as the end of World War II is like, wow, okay, we really can destroy ourselves, right?
Yes.
And then, nuclear disarmament and anti-nuclear power and then like the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 80s and all that, it goes up and down. And maybe someone in the Middle East got like a random warhead and is going to throw it to New York or whatever. Like
sure.
It goes up and down. But we had reached this point, I think, where there was this understanding that there were nukes, but they weren't really going to be part of the calculus because we know now how powerful they are. And it's kind of interesting. Like we've been talking about this type of thinking for a couple of years, or like a long time on the podcast now that like there is this element of through media and propaganda and even real information, facts about environmental collapse, facts about economic and class collapse, that we're like conditioned, whether it's purposeful or not, to be ready for this getting really unhinged.
Yeah.
Right. The fabric of this coming undone is something we've been hearing about like our whole adult lives.
Yeah. Moving on, let's just talk a little bit about some of the immediate consequences of this war. Oil spiked over $100 a barrel for the first time since the early days of the Ukraine war. It seems like $5 a gallon gas in the U.S. is imminent. I've heard talk of the highest oil prices ever. And there are also additional knock-on effects beyond just oil. It turns out a lot of the world's fertilizer comes from the Middle East.
Yeah, I was listening about this today, and this is planting season is on its way.
yeah, this is the time when the planting happens, the spring, right? At least in the northern hemisphere. Australia, probably fine. But yeah, it's not good, right? And you know, as we were talking about beforehand, Asia is the main consumer of Gulf oil in particular, and China is probably okay for about 6 months, given the massive scale of their gas reserves. I listened to the Adam 2's, the Ones and Twos pod on this.
Oh yeah, so did I.
Yeah, he was very good on this. But the problem is, Trump's like, well, we don't really take much oil from the Gulf, so it doesn't affect us. It's like, bro, it's a global market. Like, just because you're not buying that oil doesn't mean the price of all oil all over from wherever it came from doesn't. It's just like, how stupid are we here?
Either you are that stupid or you are lying, and both of these possibilities are dangerous. Like that.
Agreed.
This is why I think everybody is starting to feel a sort of, there's no way out of it all here.
Yeah.
And maybe that won't hold, that like the other possibility is that, you know, we do finally get a Trump moment where it's like, oh, okay, I won't actually do 50% tariffs on the whole world or whatever, you know. But the difference here seems to be like, at least from what they're saying, Iran wants this fight right now.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know. I mean, the price of things, again, like it all goes, we talk about this so often where it's like, they're definitely not acting like there's a midterm election.
No. Which is
I've never seen anything like this. They just got the one thing they've been told. Their people have been like, we need to make this about the year of affordability or we are all going to be destroyed.
So why don't we do a war that is guaranteed to spike inflation and gas prices? That's
right. That's right. And like, how can you make sense of that in any other way other than this is a power grab? Like, you don't want to sound like you're in like the land of the crazy here, but even like Republicans do have political operatives who do know things. They're not all incredibly stupid people. Like you might think Trump that way. And those people went to him, were like, you need to get out there and explain how you're going to make things affordable again. And he was like, what if we started a war with Iran? Like that really is what happened. We're talking about, this is the time period he was supposed to start making that case for people.
Pivot to affordability.
And instead, he's even doing stuff like, I'm thinking maybe I choose who wins the runoff in the Texas election. Did you see this one?
Yeah. But also like Carolyn Levitt went on Fox and was like, there might be a draft.
Yes. And again, like all of this has
it's like, wait, what? A draft?
Right. And like all of this has felt like we talked about this where it's like, what of these moves are real? What are sort of trial balloons, you know? And I just think that it's all just totally discombobulated now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't.
Even today, we have Trump going out and saying, I think the war is basically very complete.
Yes.
We've overwhelmingly won the war. The war is basically saying the war is over, which caused gas prices to drop back down towards 90. And then a few hours later, after the markets had closed, he was like, actually, there's much more work to do. And it's
it's even better than that. It's like, I think you could say both, actually.
Well, that's right. I mean, we're just living in this pure Schrodinger equation, quantum uncertainty, right?
Right. And then, he's talking about...
it's a fucking nightmare.
Again, the question then will become, like, what are the strategies that Iran actually choose to implement if this keeps going on, right? So like one thing
they haven't shot their last shot yet, as much as people are claiming they have. Obviously,
there's a report on BBC that I sent you just before we came on, right?
Yeah.
That the Iranians are telling any Arab or European country that expels the ambassadors of Israel and the United States will have authority and freedom to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And like, I don't know how that will go or if that's real but like, there are a level of consequences here that it is obvious that either Trump and his team just simply refused to entertain or became convinced by Israel that none of them would happen, or they were prepared for them to happen. And we're just now sitting and waiting find out which one that is, you know?
Right. Waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak.
That's right.
So as we wrap up, I feel like the role of AI, which was obviously a topic we've covered a lot on the show, in the just online has been so nefarious. Just the floods of false images and of bombings that aren't what they purport to be. You know, it's what I've been really struck by is just how endless the barrage of AI misinformation is. This is something I've thought about a lot, right? It's like, think of all the writing in the world, like all the great novels, the Shakespeare, the Roman poets, whoever, the Persian poets, you know, for that matter. And then it's just like, well, what if there were a machine that could just effectively bury all of the good stuff in an infinite mountain of slop, you know, like, and that's kind of what's happening with information more generally.
Absolutely.
It's like, what's the truth? Well, good luck figuring that out, because here's 50 million fake images to mislead you.
Well, it's like, it's like the oft used phrase, I think it's Hemingway, right? Like, bankruptcy comes gradually and then suddenly.
And then all at once. Yeah. Is that Hemingway? And I'm not sure who says that.
It feels as though people are starting to genuinely feel like, again, this is not more important than what people are actually dealing with in these theaters.
Of course not.
That there is a...
Oh, it is. You're right. It is Hemingway. It's Sun Also Rises.
There is this attack on anything that makes living as a human worthwhile.
Yeah, basically, an all-out assault.
Right, and you've sort of been feeling that since the beginning of the internet, and sort of as you know, I've had very similar opposition to just the quote unquote regular internet that has existed now is being said about AI, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty consistent thing for people like me, and because it has felt like that. The kind of like every company's a data company. Yeah. The little things like going to get a slice of pizza and having to give them your email to finalize.
I would especially say since the rise of social media. I think the pre-social
again, like it's all just like I said, gradually and then suddenly.
Yeah,
and like now we're at the point where if there is something as like earth-shattering and horrific and unacceptable as like a tactical nuke in Iran, everything that you might have thought to the way that you would find that out like 10, 20, 30 years ago, and what a moment that would be for the world, will probably be replaced by a period of time where you're trying to figure out if it's real or not. Right?
That's right. Yeah, that's well said.
Maybe being told that it's not real. Maybe like who knows what's gonna. Just who knows where this can lead when, what was the latest thing? I mean, Claude may have.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to end with. I was going to put in the thing about Epstein, but plenty of time for that later. I mean, the whole idea of the war as just a distraction from the Epstein situation, these new allegations, this credible accusation against Trump from the 80s. It's possible. I think it's bigger than that. Even.
I don't know. I
mean, it could be that petty, right? Like, got to get this off the airwaves.
But who knows? Maybe it's the people like Hegseth and co. want this to happen, and they're like, they go to Trump and say, "Look, these allegations are going to be a problem," and Bibi's doing this.
Let's wag the dog. Yeah. So, Anthropic has actually gotten a lot of good press since we did our scathing takedown of them. Well, because they got into a feud with Hegseth. Hegseth basically accused them of being woke because they refused to unilaterally allow the use of Claude to surveil American citizens and
run autonomous weapons.
run autonomous weapon systems. Now, here's the thing though. Don't get twisted.
Give them the Nobel Prize. What humane people over
there. Right. Don't get twisted about it. The reason that they said no is because the systems aren't ready. It wasn't like they're like, no, if we do this now, the system could fuck it up really badly. Like, give us a couple years, then and Hegseth and Trump is like, Anthropic is now banned. They're a woke AI company, blah blah. That's another thing. Just we talked about this last week a little bit, but like the branding of everything they don't like as woke Like, we're going to win the Iran war because in the Iraq war, we had a woke military. I'm like, oh, really? That was
these woke rules of engagement, Stu.
Yeah, about not just killing as many children as you can. Like, what? That's wokeness now. Anyway, it's pretty grim. There was
they also like, it's just this idea that, like, if we need to laud Anthropic for this decision,
it's pretty low.
It's got to tell you that we should probably pull the plug on the whole project. Right? Like, if we're all admitting that, like, it was so tenuous, but you know what? Thankfully, Stu, some good people stood up and they did the right thing. Like, it's time to say no to all of this. From best I can figure out, like, because what was the final thing? Like, it turned out that they were
already using Claude because Claude is the best AI.
And they blew up a girls' school.
Well, that's something in the Washington Post. It's not confirmed, but that Claude may have played a role in the choosing of the targets for the initial barrage, which would indicate that perhaps Claude played a role in selecting the girls' school to be targeted.
Well, interestingly, then it's like, then you get to the flip side of the AI thing, where, like, if you can put the blame on AI, right? Like, I'm not saying that didn't happen, and I'm not saying that wouldn't be troubling. You know what else would be troubling? If humans decided
that's what
to.
I was going to say, right? It's like how is Claude choosing this even worse than?
I don't know which one's worse, but, like,
well, according to Trump, like, it was Iran. It's just the Gaza hospital thing all over again, right?
Are you going to kill me by burning me alive or drowning me? I don't know. I guess I'll choose. Like, it's like, yeah, but there is this element to it that struck me of, like, could AI being implemented become cover for some of the greatest atrocities?
Well, just as it's already become cover for Amazon laying off hundreds of thousands of workers, as we've discussed many times. I would just point people out. There'll be a link in the description. I just watched a Taylor Lorenz interview she did an interview with a writer from The Atlantic about this Claude, like the PR bump that Claude has gotten, despite the fact that there's, like, zero evidence that Claude is in any way less morally bankrupt than anything else. Claude's, like, surged to #1 in the App Store, all this stuff. It's like,
no, the chances that the AI that the Trump administration was so desperate to have is the good guys, I'm going to put down as slim to none.
All right. Well, this is a pretty grim episode. This is one of our grimmest ones yet, but I think valuable things to consider and think about as this war continues. I fear that it's going to continue for quite a while, and I think the consequences are going to.
Next week.
We didn't talk about it, but that's all right. We'll figure it'll be probably something a little lighter.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that we probably for the next little while will stop locking ourselves in during the end of an episode with what we're doing next week, just in case things unfold that have to become an episode.
Yeah, I mean, we've always had the freedom to, call an audible, as they say in the world.
Here's hoping we don't have to. We can go back to, Black Mirror or what have you.
People like the Black Mirror episode. A lot of positive feedback on the Mirror.
Well, there's nostalgia for Black Mirror. It's truly like a simpler time vibe.
The quaint dystopias of the past.
Yeah. Oh yeah, look what might happen because of our phone doohickeys.
It's good stuff. All right, so we'll be back next week with something amazing, I'm sure, or horrifying, as I'm also sure. In the meantime, if you like the show, you can follow us on the podcatcher of your choice. If you really like the show, you can leave us a rating and or a review on said podcatcher. We always appreciate those. You can also follow us on Instagram at The End of the World WMS, where we post reels from the show. Yeah. Well, here's hoping that minimal suffering continues from this horrible situation, but it's not looking great so far. Not to be a doomer, if you will, but anyway, we'll be back soon.
Thoughts with the people who are affected by this. I mean,
it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. Anyway, this has been The End of the World with Michael and Stu.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Stu, and we will talk to you real soon.